There we go. Get out of the way. This came out a couple days ago. Brandon Herrera, bump stocks are so back. I think I know where he's going with this. This probably is going to get a little political. I'll try to stay fairly neutral on my side. I am actually kind of like of the opinion that bump stocks kind of like because they're a great way to waste ammo, but they are so inaccurate. Also, I can I'm decently good at just bump firing without the need of a device, but that's just me. But yeah, I do support the decision though, just because it's such an arbitrary take away something because we can decision. All right, that's my lead in. Brandon, take it away.
Man, I love it when I get to give a new gun law update that's
Why do I not have sound?
entirely good news. Man, I love it when I get to give a new gun law update that's full of entirely good news. So the federal bump stock ban is dead. Yes, you heard me right. The ATF/DOJ's bump stock ban was officially reversed in the Supreme Court.
Breaking news, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down the Trump-era ban on bump stocks.
It is now federally legal for you to own a slide fire or whatever bump fire stock that you had tucked away for this exact moment.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
The Supreme Court struck the ban down, making it clear that if you wanted to ban bump stocks, you had to do it the right way, which is the way the Constitution outlines, which is actually passing a bill through Congress and having it signed into law by the president. Not only that, but it gets even better. Senate Democrats heard the ruling and tried to do just that. They introduced their own bill to ban bump stocks. Luckily,
It didn't just ban bump stocks. It functionally banned most rifles. If you actually read what was written into the law, it would have made something like 200,000 people into felons overnight.
Republicans stood up and killed the bill immediately, making it dead on arrival.
200 million, excuse me.
Luckily, Senate Republicans stood up and
Video's still too soft? Okay.
Killed the bill Man, I love it when I get to give a new gun law update that's full of entirely good news. So the federal bump stock ban is dead. Yes, you heard me right. The ATF/DOJ's bump stock ban was officially reversed in the Supreme Court.
Breaking news, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down the Trump-era ban on bump stocks.
It is now federally legal for you to own a slide fire or whatever bump fire stock that you had tucked away for this exact moment.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
The Supreme Court struck the ban down, making it clear that if you wanted to ban bump stocks, you had to do it the right way, which is the way the Constitution outlines, which is actually passing a bill through Congress and having it signed into law by the president. Not only that, but it gets even better. Senate Democrats heard the ruling and tried to do just that. They introduced their own bill to ban bump stocks. Luckily, Senate Republicans stood up and killed the bill immediately, making it dead on arrival. So yes, the bump stock ban is dead. That's
Why
exciting
is it always
for
the
multiple
crab
reasons. For one, obviously Senate Democrats failed again to pass garbage gun control, which is always a win. But secondly, it proves the power of this ruling. It put the federal government on notice that if they want to pass a ban or a regulation, they have to do it the proper way. Not like the crap that they've been doing recently through the ATF, DOJ, EPA, whoever three-letter government agency, who can just spontaneously decide to make a rule that affects the lives of millions of Americans. When an unelected bureaucrat at the ATF can just decide on a whim without the approval of Congress to just make a rule that turns millions of Americans into felons overnight, that's a fucking problem. But speaking of which, that actually leads me over to another win we just got these last few days over arm braces. But before I go down that whole other second rabbit hole, let me talk really quickly about the sources I use for videos like this. As somebody who spent an entire political campaign being slandered by left-leaning sources, skewing or just flat out making shit up about me, knowing the bias of your source is crucial. That's why I recommend using tools like Ground News. They rate the political bias and the factual basis of news sources before you have to go through the self-lobotomizing process of reading obvious propaganda. When I'm doing research, I don't want opinions, I want facts. Ground News helps with that. We visually see on the bias distribution chart that the story is being reported mostly by the
Was what a real ad. What he's doing? What'd I miss? I looked away for like half a second. What ad?
Sources I use for videos like this. As somebody who spent an entire political campaign
Yeah, this thing was an actual hit piece, one of many that were put out against Brandon during his congressional bid.
campaign being slandered by left-leaning sources, skewing or just flat out making shit up about me. Knowing the bias of your source is crucial. That's why I recommend using tools like Ground News. They rate the political bias and the factual basis of news sources before you have to go through the self-lobotomizing process of reading obvious propaganda. What I'm doing
I do think that he should go after them for libel or slander. I forget which one's which, but he should go after them for it because they said some really bad stuff about him.
doing research, I don't want opinions, I want facts. Ground News helps with that.
We visually see on the bias distribution chart that the story is being reported mostly by the left and center, with only 17% coming from the right. On the left, Huffington Post says the ruling is a blow to gun reformers, while on the right, the Ohio Star says it's a major win. But if I want to read an article without any spin, I can just take a look at the center-rated high factuality sources like the Nevada Independent, which simply outlines what this means for the state.
It also has a blind spot feed, which shows important stories that the left or right-wing media may not be covering, but might still be important. Like this article here about how American soldiers are 9 times more likely to die by their own hand than they are by combat. So if you're into doing research on this stuff as much as I am, I would recommend checking them out. And you can get 40% off their Vantage plan using the links down in the description and in the pinned comment. So now back to the arm brace thing. So I know there's been a lot of conflicting information back and forth from the courts to the ATF, but now we finally have something locked in. A federal court has just blocked the ATF's final rule on arm braces. Yeah, that's right. If you ever pretended to give a fuck about that rule, which, spoiler alert, not a lot of people did, you can now pull these back out of the attic and stop pretending like you got rid of them. Man, just been a good week for the courts all around. Also, side note, it's been hilarious for me to watch the mass non-compliance, not just from, regular citizens, but also from manufacturers, dealers, distributors, people like that as well. Just a lot of folks going on business as usual, not giving a half of a fuck about the ban. Warms my heart. But yeah, the court's on a roll with this shit. Within like a couple of days of each other, we get bump stocks back, we get arm braces back. Let's start working on the Hughes Amendment, the NFA, I got a list. A lot of people are wondering like why bump stocks are a big deal. People have even pointed out comments I've made in the past where I say that I don't really like bump stocks. And that's true. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think bump stocks are kind of gay. They look horrible and they're great at wasting a lot of ammo really quick, but when it comes to accuracy, you're just fucking slamming rounds all over the place. But the point being, it doesn't matter what I think. Regardless of whether or not I think it's cool, it doesn't change the fact that if you read the letter of the law, a bump stock clearly does not fit the legal definition of a machine gun. A machine gun, as per US legal definition, based on a law passed by Congress and signed by the president, is essentially an automatic weapon that fires multiple rounds per single pull of the trigger. A bump stock is just a piece of plastic that allows the shooter to pull the trigger individually faster, meaning that no matter how fast it fires when a bump stock is installed on a gun, you're still only getting 1 round fired per single pull of the trigger, meaning legally it's not a machine gun. But you would already know the mechanics of a machine gun
and again, a reminder as proof, I can do it without a piece of plastic. A piece of plastic makes it easier. You can learn how to do it without the piece of plastic.
Legally, it's not a machine gun. But you would already know the mechanics of a machine gun and how it operates if you just took your interest in gunsmithing and weapons technology to the next level and signed up for sdi.edu using the links in the description and in the pinned comment. I kid. No, but seriously, links are down there. Is it a bit of a loophole? Sure. But based on the law that was written that was preventing regular civilians from owning automatic weapons without, NFA compliance or enhanced licensing, a bump stock is legally nothing more than a piece of plastic. If you want to change that, you gotta write a new law. Then it has to pass the House, then the Senate, then be signed into law by the president, and then it becomes the law. But good luck, because that just happened and it was dead on arrival. And I know it seems like I'm harping on that whole, has to be passed by Congress, signed by the president. I've harped on that multiple times for this video, but it's for a reason. That is the way that the Constitution outlines that laws are written. Whether you agree with these new laws or not, it doesn't matter. The minute you throw that out the window, the government is nothing more than just a criminal gang that happens to have territorial control over the United States territory, which, albeit, some days, that is alarmingly close to what it feels like. Seems to be something a lot of people in our current government have forgotten, conveniently. Now, factually, everything in this video that we've talked about so far, you could have found on, news sources or whatever if you'd just been paying attention. But there is something that not a lot of people are talking about that I really haven't seen anybody cover so far, to be honest. Something I think will come back around
think
in
I know
the
what this
future that I
is.
think is a delicious little piece of just unexpected bonus treat. Little cherry on top. And that, of course, was the opinion of Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor over the bump stock case. Her opinion, of course, is that they should remain illegal. Now, Justice Sotomayor is a very left-leaning Supreme Court justice, so this opinion was to be expected and is full of all sorts of, anti-gunner rhetoric. But she did include one very interesting nugget. While describing the Las Vegas shooting, of which a bump stock was used, allegedly. No, I mean, it was. But there are a lot of conspiracy theories on that. A lot of stuff that I've looked pretty deeply into, and, maybe that's something we'll cover in the channel going forward. I don't want to get too conspiratorial on stuff like that, but if it's something you guys would be interested in seeing a breakdown on, who knows, we might cover it. Just in case I feel like getting my channel deleted, I guess. But anyhow, describing the bump stock that was used in the Vegas shooting, she described it, quote, "He did so by affixing bump stocks to commonly available semi-automatic rifles," describing the AR-15s. If you have no idea why that's a fucking huge deal, allow me to explain. So probably the most important case that's ever been brought to the Supreme Court as far as the Second Amendment goes, the landmark case, was DC v. Heller. It's actually done in the 2000s. It further clarified the intent of the Second Amendment, including verifying that it protected the individual right to keep and to bear arms. One of the things that came out of that ruling, though, was the phrase common use. Meaning that so long as a firearm was in circulation in the American market or in, the hands of American citizens in quote-unquote common use, it was protected then as an arm under the Second Amendment. I'm painting with broad strokes here, but just go with me. It's one of the arguments that's actually been used about arm braces is because there have been millions of them sold that it would technically fall under common use, therefore protected under the Second Amendment. In trying to rationalize why assault weapons bans might be constitutional or legal, liberals have often cited that these so-called assault weapons, AR-15s, things like that, are not actually common use weapons. They're instead niche weapons, only designed as weapons of war or whatever the fuck that means. Because due to the prior ruling with DC v. Heller, if it fell under common use, then it would be automatically protected by the Second Amendment and therefore legal and not under the umbrella of control by the federal government. So in trying to make AR-15s sound scary, Justice Sotomayor just handed us a fucking Easter gift basket. In trying to make the AR-15 sound scary as a commonly available semi-automatic rifle, basically just laid it out there as a synonym of what would be common use. Will this hold up in court as definitive proof that it is common use? No, this is a dissenting opinion. This is literally the fucking loser's corner. This is what the people who didn't win think. But it is going to be hilarious whenever an assault weapons ban comes across the bench, and Justice Sotomayor has to argue that AR-15s or similar assault weapons, whatever the fuck, don't fall under the category of common use, even though she literally just fucking argued that they are. So not only did they lose in the court, but they may have accidentally painted themselves in an intellectual corner later on down the road. And I just think that's neat. So yeah, it's nice to be able to come to you guys with a video every once in a while that isn't like, the sky is falling, the ATF's cracking down on our nutsack. We had some wins in the courts, and we should celebrate accordingly. But that doesn't mean we should get complacent. There's always going to be another fight, and I will always be here to tell you who we need to bully. So yeah, I know it's not as lighthearted as my normal content, but I think it is important to keep you guys in the loop, especially when it comes to matters of gun laws and Second Amendment stuff. More content coming next week. We got a range video coming out, and we got a gun meme review after that, hopefully. Be sure to check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. YouTube's been doing that thing again. I fucking hate it when they do that. I hope it's not politically motivated, but fuck, they're making me wonder. Speaking of subscribed, you can also check me out over at the Unsubscribed podcast. We got some awesome guests lately. Jack Carr, Demetrius Johnson coming soon. Other than that, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I appreciate you for staying this far into the video, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks.
Okay, didn't have a whole lot to add on my part. Didn't know exactly how and where he was going to go with that, but yeah. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are still going to argue against it. The point I would make is, if they can circumvent the way to write the law for the Second Amendment, they can circumvent the way to make law for anything. So, and as has been proven many times in recent history, it does seem to come back and bite you. So that should be where things stand.